Hi, and welcome to a video of a PowerPoint that I am going to show you all. So I'm going to start it from the beginning, and hopefully this is going to work. So first of all, I want you to know that what is a challenging behavior? A challenging behavior is a behavior emitted by a learner that results in self-injury or injury to others, causes damage to the physical environment, interferes with the acquisition of a new school, and or socially isolates the learner. That's a really big quote. But what it really means is that a challenging behavior is something that we or the person who's doing it doesn't like about himself. Now, while this is by all means not an exhaustive list, this is a list of all the different kinds of challenging behaviors that you might see in young children in a classroom. And you have to also think to yourself, what is the challenging behavior that gets on my nerves the most? Because that is most likely going to be the one that you're going to have the hardest time actually dealing with. How it manifests, and you can read here, but it manifests in behaviors that are socially unacceptable, that are socially reprehensible sometimes, and things that make us wish we hadn't taken our children out in public. And it's important to know also that over 15% of all students with disabilities are taking psychotropic medications. However, it's also important to know that a third of all adolescents with disabilities have been suspended or expelled because our schools are just not equipped to handle their type of mental illness and or challenging behavior. The impact of these behaviors is pretty profound. And part of that is because, number one, we do have those kids in our classrooms that do have challenging behaviors on a very consistent basis. For some reason, schools are more apt to expel kids who they can't manage because we all want perfect children, don't we? And one of the biggest problems with preschool teachers is that they report that the hardest part of their job is dealing with challenging behaviors. And yet, for some reason or another, we don't make special needs any kind of a requirement for our preschool teachers. The only thing mandated by the state of California is that you have those 4 core classes or 12 units, but nowhere in there does it mandate that you have any kind of special ed education. And it's sad because these kids grow up to have low self-esteem, low self-confidence. Sometimes they even end up in the criminal justice system, and it's hard. So what do we want them to do instead? So instead of focusing on what they can't do, let's first of all focus on what they can do. And that is that we want them to be able to get along with others. We want them to behave. We want them to be able to regulate their behavior and to learn how to problem solve without resorting to hitting, biting, scratching, whining, yelling, or screaming. We want them to take the blocks or the Legos and play with those games for more than 5 seconds and not throw them around the room. We want them to learn to use their words with their friends and with others. And we want them to also be able to look at someone's face and say, oh, I can see that you're angry with me just by looking at their face and reading social cues. And we want them to also, once they know how to do those things for themselves, we also want them to be able to assist other people as well. And it does begin really early. We are the architects of a child's brain, so it does begin very early. There are also family factors that we have to take into account because not everything that happens to a child or causes a child to misbehave is a product of what goes on in our child care centers. It's also a product of their upbringing. We have the age-old debate of nature versus nurture, and so part of this is the genetics that they are born with, and part of it is the environment in which they're living. So we also have kids who have, I call it chaos parenting or catastrophe parenting, and these are parents who make every single thing that happens one grade or another of a catastrophe. So, oh my God, you fell off the swing. Oh my God, you spilled the milk. Oh my God, you hit your brother. And so everything is a catastrophe, which breeds chaos in the household. And so the child always has that cortisol streaming from his system. I also want you to remember that high quality caregiving and a high quality classroom does not mean that you will never have a challenging behavior. In fact, I can guarantee that you will always have challenging behaviors, whether it's from one or more children. But addressing those challenging behaviors actually means that you're promoting the development of social confidence. So we have to really be careful and recognize that whatever we say and however we do it is going to have a lasting impact on that child and his family. The early predictors of challenging behaviors would be temperamental difficulties, so children who might be slow to warm up or children who are easily angered, any kind of language difficulties because they can't express themselves completely, and then non-compliance, kids who are just always saying no. We also need to change our perspective. We have to see the behaviors as an attempt to communicate a message about their unmet needs. We have to see children with those challenging behaviors in the same positive light that we see the kids who we might naturally fall in love with. And we have to see ourselves as facilitators, as people who are actually going to help those children, not as people who are out to mete out punishment and discipline. And it's sad because children who have challenging behaviors are, rejected by their friends. They don't get a lot of positive feedback because teachers are usually trying to catch them being bad because, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They do worse in school and they're less likely to be successful in not just kindergarten, but everywhere else. They're also 3 times more likely to be expelled than children in K through 12 combined. So first of all, how can we deal with these? So know what the child is going through. So something sets me up. So I'm engaged in a preferred activity at home and at school with others around. And I've moved into a smaller home recently, and my mom made me give away a lot of my things because it didn't fit in the smaller house. Well, now a child or an adult tries to take something away from me, or me away from something I like doing and move me to something I don't like. It's triggering a response based on my now memory or emotional memory, because I've also now moved into a smaller home and given my things away. So I'm an emotional wreck, and I scream, I bite, I hit, and I pinch. And everyone backs off and leaves me alone, which reinforces my behavior, and I get to avoid doing something I don't want to do. Oh my gosh. Well, let's see how to take care of that in a positive way. So first of all, before we just rip a child away from something, let's have a classroom picture schedule so that the child knows exactly what comes next. You can write the child a social story about the move so he can keep talking about it, and in that way neutralize whatever's causing his post-traumatic stress, and do lessons on coping with the whole class. Before trying to take the child away from his toy or cleanup time, provide some kind of cue. It's almost cleanup time, maybe a bell. You can also have a verbal countdown or a timer song so the child knows that he has 5 more minutes and then 3 more minutes, and then 1 more minute to finish playing. And then show the child what he's going to be involved in afterwards. And so the child doesn't see something as being taken away, but rather things are changing and I'm going to like what I'm doing next as well. Keep teaching the child to use their words instead of screaming, biting, hitting, and pinching. And keep using visual reminders of what to do instead, and teach negotiation skills. And finally, high quality, abundant praise to those who are following directions. The child sees what he has to do in order to get that same praise. Give choices. So it might be cleanup time from the block area, but I see you really like the blocks, especially that little block car. Would you like to take the car with you outside? And guide to a calm down space. If you see that you have children who generally tend to have outbursts like this, have a quiet space, such as a cardboard box with some little lights inside and a pillow and a blanket, maybe 1 book, that the child can crawl into by himself if he needs to calm down on his own. So these are some things that you can do to manage challenging behaviors. Obviously, there's lots more. And in the discussions this week, we'll be talking about it.